Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is December the 5th, and we are on Nexus Nights. What's up, guys? Oop,
Good evening,
there we
good
go.
evening.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh,
That is
all right.
exactly how I feel right now.
Yeah, I'm ready to go to sleep, but that's okay. I'm drinking lots of coffee. Lots of coffee.
Water, beverage of choice.
All right. So tonight the discussion is going to be on the wake of Dreamhack, and we're also going to talk about the European teams and how they stand with all the roster changes. So that's going to be exciting. We got plenty to talk about there. But before we start, I thought we would go around and do another round table question. So the Black Friday sale was started last week and it goes till Monday, I believe. Did you guys buy anything? What'd you buy? You can start us off, Don.
Yeah, I did. I bought. I bought the
Angry
that new Rainer skin.
Which
The one with
Wait, which
the,
one is
the
that?
Cowboy.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah,
That one makes me angry because it's like he has a shotgun, but it still
It
works
reminds me
as not a
so
shotgun.
much of Graves, League of Legends.
Yeah, but he's so cool though.
It
It's
is.
just
know,
the
I-
sound
Beautiful.
effect
I
that
love
bothers
it.
me. It's a shotgun, but it sounds like I don't know.
It sounds dumb.
An
Yes,
assault
that's correct.
Yeah, I got that. I thought about getting the Pajamather skin for Abathur, but
You don't even play
I just don't
Abathur.
play him enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen you play Raynor, actually.
Oh, I do. I'll play him in Hero League.
Oh, okay. That's because he's like easy.
That's right.
Easy
'Cause
win.
he's easy, and sometimes you just have to have a ranged carry, and you can't pick Thrall for whatever reason. Although I'm finding less and less situations where I can't pick Thrall than Frank.
No.
All right, Christine, what'd you buy?
Nothing.
Boo!
Good. No, I've got 3 more days to totally break that resolve, but so far so good. I try my best not to spend money on games. I've bought in the last 2 hero packs when they were released, so I was like, all right, there's my present to myself. But Daunt just mentioned Pajamather, and I didn't realize it was
Pajamather.
on sale, and now I'm kind of 3 days. We'll
Caving.
see. We'll see what
Slowly
happens.
caving. Speaking of caving, I caved and finally bought. I did my first microtransaction of all time.
Ooh,
Proud.
boy.
I played like League of Legends like all of last year, and I've refused to buy anything. And ever since I started in Here's the Storm, like I've only been using gold for everything, and just being like, well, I just won't get any skins or mounts ever. But I finally broke. I gave up. I bought Frostworm Arthas and Angelic Vala, and I bought the Dire Wolf mount, which, by the way, goes very nicely with Thrall. It's like good old Warcraft
It goes
3 days.
nicely with everyone.
So
Like,
yeah,
Oh.
so I would buy the Angelic Vala mount or a skin, except her master skin is just so it's really one of the best master skins, I think.
It's
And
one of
then
the
that-
only viable master skins.
It's one of the only viable master skins. Like if we're talking about straight balance here, right? And then the Direwolf mount, I really want that to work with Rhaegar. It's just
Yeah,
that would be
just wolf
interesting.
on
so
top of
Blizzard,
wolf.
take note. Let Rhaegar turn into other things, right?
That
Fun
would
fact.
actually be really cool.
If I
Fun
could
fact,
play,
though, you mentioned the balance. Sorry, I just want to throw this one in quickly. You mentioned the balance of skins. The Phoenix Tyrande skin, for the longest time, I can't remember its actual name off the top of my head, unless that was right, and go me. It was actually, the range on certain abilities was actually larger
What?
than the skin, so it was imbalanced. It was a skin
That's
imbalance.
amazing.
Anyway, sorry for interrupting you, Fox.
I had
Go
no
on.
idea.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that's right. We should introduce Mike over here because he hasn't officially been introduced yet. So, oh dang, you know what? I totally forgot to change his name correctly. Let me do that.
yeah,
really
my name
fast.
is not what is listed
It
right
is-
now.
Under
Yeah.
Fox.
I gotcha. We're
I
getting
mean,
this
the
solved.
statement is correct. The sentence is under Fox, but
Got it. Nailed it. All right. Now. All right, so this is Mother Fox. He's a longtime lurker on TL, and we love him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a few months at least, forever. Really. That's
congratulations on being a lurker.
thanks.
You lurked long enough to get noticed.
All right, so let's jump into the subjects here. So DreamHack, a lot of things happened at DreamHack. Last time we talked about scaling changes and things of that nature, and how it would affect the game moving forward. And we talked some theory craft about certain heroes doing better under the new scaling changes, and some of them doing worse. There were a lot of heroes at DreamHack that we saw come out of the woodwork and kind of come into their own and become, I would say, kind of a standard pick. And among those, I think the biggest ones were Falstad, Thrall, and ETC. Not because they were necessarily picked all the time, but because they seemed really, really powerful. And before this patch, I don't think we would have considered them a 100% pick all the time. This is a great hero type of hero. So what do you guys think about that?
And ETC were basically picked all the time. I mean, particularly by the end.
Uh,
Semifinals and finals. Falstad was at every semifinals and finals game, I believe.
before the scaling changes? I don't think
Oh,
so.
no. I meant, no.
Yeah.
I mean, at DreamHack.
Yeah,
sorry.
before
okay.
the scaling changes,
No, no,
Falstad
right.
was everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Falstad, like we saw all of them being used situationally, right? We saw Falstad occasionally with the Mighty Gust, going as far back as like the European Championship. ETC was still being used as like a pocket pick to deal with like melee compositions, and Thrall was even being used badly. but we really kind of just saw them come into their own. So what do you guys think the reason for that is? Anyone?
Well, I'm sure that Don will give you a lecture and a half on why Thrall is great now.
Well, yeah, I mean, all right, so let's just start with Thrall. I mean, first and foremost, guess which hero had the highest win percentage at DreamHack? We'll start with that.
Over 7 games, okay,
Yeah,
calm down.
All right. So it's over 7 games. Thrall was used to bring in damage on the front line, especially against Morales comps. So that's one of the things that Team Liquid used him for in particular. And here's the deal with Thrall. I mean, his kit was always pretty solid. It's been pretty solid for a while, at least in theory. The issue was really one of scaling. I mean, he was always a late game beast. He's always been a late game beast. I mean, ever since he came out, and since his initial nerfs, and then even with all the tweaks he's had along the way, he always had kind of a screwed up power curve. With the scaling changes, all of his power was just front loaded right back into him, right at level 1, and to where he basically one-shots people at level 1, all the squishies. And I mean, not one-shots, but I mean, he's going to knock off 50-60% of their health really easily. And so when you have that kind of power right off the bat, you're going to get noticed. And then one of the things that's always confused me is why teams have kind of preferred Butcher to Thrall, because Thrall is a much more rounded kit. He's always been able to poke. He's been able to do a lot more things. He has Sundering, which is a great team fighting ability, compared to anything that the Butcher has. So really, it was just a matter of time before someone discovered him, and he's been discovered finally.
I think
he is definitely a lot more prominent in Hero League, and I found that Abathur Thrall is unbelievably ridiculous to deal with, and especially like you mentioned, he was used quite a bit against Morales compositions, and that is very, very common to see in Hero League. And even just if you're queuing in quick match, you'll see that Thralls are almost always picked against a Morales.
Yeah, the one thing that confuses me about what I see people do with Thrall now is that most everyone's still building a Wind Fury build, and I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. I mean, what I explain to people is, you should do a Chain Lightning build with Thrall unless you have a really good reason to do something else. But if we look at, say, how LoL was using him on Team Liquid, he was doing I think it was either block or seasoned marksman, depending upon the game, and then throwing it in Venom at 4, plus the Wind Fury cooldown at 7, and then going straight out into a Wind Fury build. That's okay, but I don't think that's necessarily the best way to do him most of the time. I mean, if you take the Chain Lightning talents at 1 and 4, and then follow through at 7, you're actually going to do a lot more damage But I think more importantly than that, you have a real poke game, and you can sustain indefinitely in lane with the mana talent at 1 plus the chain lightning boost at 4. I think that it's going to take a little bit of time for people to kind of re-envision Thrall in terms of what he does, how he should be played, and what he can do. But I think that's one of the things that we're going to see change over time. He'll be less of a Wind Fury build character, and he'll go more to a Chain Lightning build. Not that Wind Fury doesn't have its place in this game. I use Wind Fury sometimes, especially if I have to bust a lot of tanks. But if you're talking about a general way to play him, I think Chain Lightning is going to be the new standard before long. That's my guess.
And it's funny that you say that, because if you look at hot slogs right now, at least for North America, the top build is exactly what you just described. All the other ones are predominantly focused on Wind Fury, but the top build is exactly what you said. So I think that it's starting to sway that way already.
I've had like a little bit of experience playing Thrall since the change, and it's amazing how much more damage he does. I think he actually does the most damage per auto attack at level 1 now. And so like he just breaks people, and with the Chain Lightning build, he never runs out of mana. It's so easy to win lane now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can straight up lane against Agara with the Chain Lightning build. That's how good it is.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Motherfox?
Yeah, I think that I think it was Dustin Browder during BlizzCon. He was actually talking about Uther and Tyrael, and he mentioned that the reason why these heroes were really good is because they aided in disruption of coordinated teams. At least why they're really great at the pro level. And I think that one thing that all like Thrall, Falstead, and ETC all have in common is that they have these ults that are really, really disruptive and really kind of control team fights. That being said, I was rewatching Dreamhack before we started here, and I wasn't super impressed with a lot of Thrall's ults. I don't know whether that's because they're easy to dodge or they're easy to get around by pro players, or if they're just not used to landing them right. But a lot of times it seemed like the Sunder would go off and then just there'd be no follow-up or nothing would really happen.
It's got a really weird delay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a tricky ult to use, I think.
I also think that's kind of the point of it too, though. It's to sort of cause a lull in the fight. It's to literally sunder the fight to break it up. So while there's times where it's a divide and conquer thing and you can jump on that, I think a lot of the time when it was used, that's what it was used for. In the most literal sense, it was used for sundering.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's kind of like Falstad in that respect. Falstad, Mighty Gust. You can do a lot of things with Mighty Gust, but like 90% of the time we just see it as like, okay, things aren't going well, let's just disengage, let's just get out of here. So I think that's another thing that has lent itself towards Falstad. Another thing that I've noticed with Falstad is he does a lot of damage now with the scaling changes.
Yeah.
When we tried him out in when we originally tried out the PTR, we noticed that Falstad was a beast. And now that the patches have actually gone through, it's really obvious that he does so much damage, and he's actually tankier than a lot of other ranged carries like Vala, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any ranged carries that do more damage than Falstad, like over say like a 5-second period of time when he has all of his stuff going? All of his skills.
The only thing I can think of that maybe is like Tychus, but I don't know. I haven't played Tychus at all.
He does hurt, but I don't think of auto attack Falstad as really a burst damage kind of character.
Yeah, but it's still scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just curious because it seems like he hurts a lot compared to the other heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely. I tried a bunch of duels against him as Vala and just lost horribly. So I know he beats Vala for sure.
Yeah.
He can also afford to stay in risky situations a lot longer because of the way that his barrel roll works. There are just so many maps where he can really take advantage of the fact that its range gets extended as long as you get halfway through a piece of terrain. So.
Right. So what do you guys think about ETC?
Well, here's the thing about ETC.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, fine. The interesting thing is that we've just noted that both Falstad and Thrall, their ults worked to sort of break up fights. And then you have ETC, who that's the exact opposite goal. Like his goal is to keep people where they are. And I just find that interesting that the three heroes that became the most popular, especially during DreamHack, like they're just so polar opposite in that way. I think that the scaling definitely benefited ETC. We had a conversation a couple days ago in Team Liquid chat about Murden versus ETC, and that was an interesting conversation just because we were discussing how much damage they put out too. And for a tank, not only does ETC have phenomenal lockdown and disrupt, but he can do some pretty good damage. And I mean, especially when you've already got assassins that got scaled up and do how much more damage, enough to make them go from last tier to top tier picks. Having that extra damage on a tank, it hurts, and they definitely showed it when they picked him during DreamHack.
I think the biggest thing for ETC, I mean, yeah, I think that the stat changes and the buffs he's had recently certainly help, but probably more than anything else, I think that he's benefited just from the way the meta's evolved since the summer. I mean, if you think about what he's really good at and what Mosh Pit's really good at, he's a great anti-melee hero character. And so with all these multi-warrior compositions, with the melee assassins showing up again, I mean, why wouldn't you pick ETC in that? Or into that anyway? Because he's going to be able to control them and disrupt the heck out of them, and then, mosh pit them and, lock down a huge chunk of the team in all likelihood.
Yeah, I think a large part of the reason, like you say that his goal is opposite from breaking up fights, but I don't know if that's necessarily true, because as long as mosh pit is up, he always has this kind of fear aura around him, where the enemy team like really doesn't want to clump up at all, because the possibility of him getting like a 3 or a 4-man mosh pit is devastating. So I think when we see the ETC pick, it kind of naturally breaks up the fight anyway, if that makes sense.
That's kind of the difference, though, I think, is that when it comes to Falstad and Thrall, their ults don't have the potential to lock anyone down in that same way, unless you consider like maybe knocking them into a corner and then body blocking them.
Right.
Whereas he has the option to either position himself to threaten the enemy team into backing up, or to just straight up go in, wait for an opportunity, and lock them down, right?
Right.
That's the possibility. Yeah. So I understand why you'd say that it might be, like, why you disagree with that. But I think that that's the big difference, is the fact that that's possible. It's not the only outcome.
I see. Have anything to add, Mother Fox?
Actually, I'm going to steal an idea from you, because I thought it was interesting when you said it the other day. But just the idea that I guess before ETC came back into prominence, like, at least I frequently thought of him as a mosh pit machine, and he, like, his sole purpose was to get it into position and get that 4 or 5-man mosh pit. But like in tournaments, mosh pit isn't exactly being used that way. Like, it's almost like mosh pit is, it's not that it's not important, it's just his other abilities are good enough for him to carry, and then in addition to that, he also has this potential for just a complete team wipe that will carry the game.
It seems like seems like people are using him even just to pick off one person, like mosh pit one person, and then it's fine. Yeah. I think before, maybe he just wasn't he wasn't powerful enough. The rest of his kit wasn't powerful enough to justify just picking him. So you could pick off one person, you had to kill at least like 2 or 3 people to make like the mosh pit worth it.
I think the most fascinating thing is that people are using mosh pit now as opposed to stage dive. I mean, if we think about what was going on at the end of alpha, early beta, pros weren't using mosh pit in pro games. It was always stage dive, almost always stage dive. But now it's the complete opposite. I mean, I always kind of preferred mosh pit stage dive, and I really I mean, all right. Let me take it back. I understand why people took stage dive back then, because it was a guaranteed thing as opposed to mosh pit, which in theory you could be interrupted in any number of ways.
Right.
But if anything, there are more ways to interrupt the mosh pit now than there were a year ago. But notwithstanding that, we're still seeing mosh pit being taken exclusively.
Well, even if it gets disrupted, it's still like a half second of stunning their team, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
So team fight it is.
For sure. So those are the ones that really stood out as being strong. Let's talk about some of the heroes that kind of mysteriously went missing at DreamHack. One of the biggest things I think is interesting is we still saw no Nazeebo. We talked about this last time, that Nazeebo was not really in the meta, but now we still don't see him, and I don't think we're gonna see him some more.
I'm okay with that.
We saw Zeratul basically disappear from existence after they gave him the Master Warp Blade and took away focused attacks. And Jaina also kind of fell a little bit from grace, and now Kayle is kind of becoming the top mage pick. Any thoughts on that?
Well, let's talk about
Jaina.
Zeratul.
All right.
You want to start with Zeratul, or do you want to start with Jaina?
When did focus attack?
You can start with Zeratul. You just do you.
So when
All
did
right.
focus attack get its nerf, and how much of this could just be that people aren't comfortable with them enough yet?
Well, all right. So focus attack was replaced with Master Warp Blade in the last patch, and I'm pretty sure it was the last patch. And the difference is that instead of having a 75% bonus to your first auto attack being readily available, now you get 100% bonus to your third auto attack on a hero.
It's a consecutive auto attack. That's
Correct,
the key.
consecutive auto attack. So
On
what that
a
means-
specific hero, I think.
Yes, correct. On a specific hero, which means that you have to be in there for 3 auto attacks, which is basically 3 seconds or so, in order to really get in a full rotation. I don't really understand why Blizzard made this change. I don't think it was necessary. I think that even before focus attack was removed, Zeratul was out of place, both because of recent nerfs and because of changes to the meta, where everything was becoming more warrior heavy, such that the risk reward proposition for Zeratul, particularly in pro play and in higher level play, was kind of out of whack already. Meaning that there's a huge risk to picking Zeratul that you don't really have a real body. It's the same problem you have when you take Nova. You have to make sure that your Zeratul player is able to make plays. Otherwise, your team's kind of stuck 4v5. And with all the constant nerfs to his damage, it was much harder for him to make those plays. And I think that hell, if anything, that Void Prison nerf was as brutal as the damage nerfs to Zeratul that he's been hitting. I mean, it's a lot riskier to play him now. So, now we're at a point where you have to do some funky auto attack build that in order to get the most damage out of him. Wormhole's not even really an option if you do that, because you're not going to get in 3 attacks before you're able to wormhole back out.
It's
so
literally
that kind of leaves
impossible.
you with, yeah, right, exactly. So you're left with like a cleave build at this point. Double bombs is worthless.
I
So
think
what Zera-
honestly, I think gathering power is the only way to go now. To be honest, just me.
Yeah, the old cleave build.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I mean, I've messed around with some auto attack builds and kind of playing them the old way. I've messed around with Vampiric Strike, which actually is okay for against warrior heavy comps. It gives Zeratul some pretty good sustain. But if you're talking about competitive play, I mean, I don't even know why you're picking Zeratul at that point. I mean, either you're erasing a hero in like 3 seconds, or you're pretty much useless.
I mean, at that point, you just
and that's
pick
the
Thrall,
problem.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
You're picking him for Void.
I just picked Thrall now.
I mean, you're picking him for Void
Why not?
Prism, right?
Yeah, you're picking him for Void Prison. I mean, yes, you can go Shadow Assault now, and you can erase somebody. Just make sure you dodge the blinds and the stuns, but that's going to be a much dodgier proposition in pro play. Now, Team Liquid just pulled that off today in the End of the Storm tournament, but
I don't know how effective that actually was, though. I'm not sure if the Zeratul was what won them the game.
no,
wouldn't say
I
so,
don't
but-
know. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's
It wasn't a
one of those
large
things where
enough
it's gimmicky.
liability, at least.
No. Now, the one thing that I'll say is this: is that just because Zeratul is probably unfit for pro play now, does not mean he's not going to be a pub stomper still for the games for the rest of us. I mean, you're still going to do a lot of work. He still has a beastly early game where he can kick out a lot of damage, pull off ridiculous ganks, and kill people, and just roam like crazy. But when you're talking about pro play, where it's much harder to get those kinds of insurmountable leads and snowball things to an easy victory, I don't know why he'd be picked at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can understand that. you want to talk about Jaina?
I would not mind. So Jaina is one of my favorite assassins. I've played her since Alpha. I love her. Since Alpha. Was she out in Alpha? It all blends together. Basically, since I started playing the game, I've been playing her.
I think she came out like around December last year.
Yeah,
was it
Alpha.
really? Oh my goodness. Yeah, she wasn't in Alpha at all. What am I talking about?
Been a while.
When she was released, there we go. Let's go with that statement. When she was released,
Yeah.
I started playing her and I loved her. So when she became a prominent presence in the scene, I was like, finally she's being recognized, because she offers so much utility in the form of her slows, and whether you go Ring of Frost or Water Elemental, you're going to get some value out of it, even if it's just like that second delay where the team has to avoid your ring, or the small amount of slow and the chill that the Summon Water Elemental provides. And she was doing really well. And like we've seen, she was a first pick very often for a while, and then she wasn't first pick, but she was very often picked in second or third phase. And then Kael'thas showed up. And he was popular for a bit, then it died down, and then Chain Bomb became a thing, and we're seeing him getting picked up over Jaina now again. And you mentioned Gathering Power being one of the like real only viable things for Zeratul, and I honestly think that's one of the biggest differences between Kael'thas and Jaina when it comes to viability. I mean, they're both incredibly viable, but their level 4 talents, when you look at them, Jaina has very good level 4 talents in my opinion. I mean, in Venom, I don't really want to be that close to the enemy to have to use it.
I wish we
but
had
Frost
Valiver
Shards
for
and
this
Snowstorm-
discussion.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I'm someone who will pick like in Venom on Zagara, so I would do it anyway just because it's funny. But she's got better level 4s. But that being said, Kael'thas has Gathering Power, and if you are a pro player on a team that you know can protect you, and you've got a Kael'thas with Gathering Power, like that's just you're done. Like, he's going to dish out so much damage, and he already does. And I mean, when you look at his level 16 backdraft with the slow on the Chain Bomb, considering Chain Bomb is still the go-to build, he's got the slow that Jaina has, but he's also got burst damage, and he's got the Phoenix to zone if he needs to, and he's got the Phoenix to siege if he needs to. He's got Pyroblast because it's funny, but like, he's just got so much more to offer. And while Jaina has a bit more versatility in her build, which I think is what makes her viable, when you look at the damage and when you compare each level's talents and what they offer, I think Kael'thas has a bit of an edge there. Even though it's kind of set in stone, he definitely, at least in level 4, gets the better talents. And
Are pro players actually taking Gathering
built-
Power on Kale though? Because I think
I've seen
they
some.
usually take
I,
Netherwind.
seen some.
there were a
And I
couple.
mean-
I think the key there is that I think that he's getting a little bit more versatile with the Gathering Power changes. So there's
Yeah.
a couple different ways to build them.
Exactly. It's the little things. And I mean, his build is relatively set in stone, but that being said, there's like just minor picks that you can change, which will sort of determine how it's going to play out. Like at level 16, if you get Backdraft or Arcane Barrier, will you get a slow or will you get a shield?
I think Arcane
mean,
Barrier
really-
is also pretty biggie, because like
is. Yeah,
having that extra health is like
It
a
absolutely
huge
is.
deal, especially
Well, it
when you
almost
have a
makes,
lot more damage. Go ahead.
After
Yeah.
level 20, if you have Arcane Barrier and Bolt of the Storm, it's really hard for people to kill you. I mean,
That's true,
he's
yeah.
just super safe in the late game.
Which is why I think that Gathering Power is so effective on him. And it might not be that popular now, but when you see it in action with a team that actually knows what they're doing, you can't kill him. He just keeps dishing out damage, and that Gathering Power stacks pretty quick. And if you've played a quick match game with or against a Nova, you know how much that starts to hurt. And it's the same thing with Kael'thas when it starts to stack. And that might not be the reason that he's necessarily picked over Jaina in pro play, but it's starting to have an effect. And I've seen a couple pros pick it up.
Let me ask
And
this
it
question:
hurts.
Is Jaina really competing with Kale, or is Jaina being crowded out by other ranged assassins like Falstad and Raynor and
I'm gonna go with both.
and some of these new characters, coming into play? Because
Possible.
I mean, you wouldn't expect to see double mage comp that often, and at least not anymore anyway, especially with all these warrior comps running around. But what we're seeing is that teams just aren't picking Jane at all. Period. Even when she's open, or even if Kael'thas is already taken, they're opting for something else. Namely the Raynor or the Falstad now.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. I mean, who is Kael really competing with?
Well, I think even if you
Who's
look
Jaina
at
competing?
even if you look at compositions, if you look at drafting, if one team takes Kael, the other team will try to take Jaina, because like you still want to have that nice balance of mages. But yeah, I think double mage is less important now when you have some of the extra tools from people like Falstad and stuff like that to disengage.
What are you thinking, Fox? I saw your mouth open for a second, like you wanted to say something, and then you bit your tongue.
I play a lot of Jaina and KT on ladder, and I like Jaina's character design better, but lately I've been taking KT more, and that's largely because of his stun. Just being like over any objective where there are no minions or neutral creeps or whatever, being able to power his Neitherwind with your D key to be able to stun like 3 members of the enemy team is just so powerful, and you can just wipe an entire objective with that. As far as what I was going to say before, I think the reason why I would compare Jaina to KT in terms of opportunity cost during drafting is because both of them punish the enemy team for creeping up in ways that Raynors and Falsteads don't. Because both of them are not just single target assassins. They're this kind of area burst damage assassins, and that's the way I think about both of them.
That's fair. I think those are both very good points.
Right. Okay. So, thinking about how all these assassins have kind of come out of the woodwork and become a lot stronger, do you think that is a recipe for the warrior heavy meta being phased out? Do you think we're starting to see kind of the end of that double, triple warrior stuff go away, or do you think that's still around?
In the insane popularity that it had before, yes. In general, no. I mean, we have enough heroes in the game now where having 2, sometimes even 3 warriors can make sense as long as one of them is an Artanis. But yeah, having that every match, I think, is not realistic anymore to expect.
I don't know. I mean, if you look at DreamHack, I think most of the team compositions were still double warrior comps. I mean, Fnatic was going very heavy on double warriors at DreamHack, and I'm not entirely sure why that would change now. I think the only thing that might happen is we might see one of those 2 warriors being replaced with a Thrall or a Butcher or one of the other big melee assassins. But what I don't think is going to happen is we're going to return back to, alpha, beta, where we were dealing with more of a poke comp meta, where there was just a single melee hero, or maybe there was a warrior plus an Uther or some other melee healer. I think we're going to see more heavy front still. We'll see more melee heroes than we've seen in the past. At least more of those types of compositions with the changes.
I want to ask something quickly though, because you mentioned poke comps. Do you think they're really viable anymore? I mean, that one game with the Murky Leoric where it was like kind of a poke comp because they just die and come back and do a little bit more damage. That sort of worked, but in general, as we knew poke comps in the past, do you think it's really viable based on where the meta and where the heroes are at right now?
There are a lot of tools to combat them now.
Yeah.
Like in DreamHack, the medic was used by Bakery several times to kind of prevent, or I guess in response to comps that just couldn't actually get to the back line and kill the medic, and that just punishes poke comps really hard because they can't play these wars of attrition anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't see more poke comps or still continue to see the old style poke comps. And when I say poke comp, I mean really what I'm saying is we're just talking about a lot of range damage dealers and maybe 1 warrior up front, and that's it. Plus a support, either ranged or melee. I think that we can still see poke comps. I don't see why not. I think that part of the reason why we see less of them now is because a lot of the big heavy hitting ranged poke abilities are gone. Like the single biggest one was Kael'thas's Flame Strike with Ignite. I mean, that's been gone for a while now. You know, I don't think Jaina will ever be used in quite that fashion just because her abilities aren't spammable. So I guess in theory, I think we'll still see it, but I think that hard engage comps with heavier fronts are in a better place overall, right now anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's a pretty good discussion overall of some of the meta changes that we saw at DreamHack. Let's move on to roster changes and talk about how those roster changes may have affected the teams based on their hero pools and the heroes that we saw emerging, things like that. So, probably the most obvious changes were to Liquid and Fnatic. Those were the ones that had basically completely rerouted, completely new rosters, barring 2 or 3 key core members.
Mm-hmm.
We also saw some minor changes on Rocket, Dignitas, and Navi.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you guys think about these changes? You guys have anything specific you'd like to talk about?
Just general statement. I think they were both for the best. I think both teams are starting to look better already, and it's only been a month since most of those changes started happening.
Mm-hmm. I think that the new Team Liquid, to me, it seems stronger than it was before. They have some coordination issues, but I think that the team overall is looking a lot stronger than the old one with Black Squirt, Falcon, and Grand Paqueta.
Yeah.
Something I will say is that I think Lowell fits a lot better on Liquid than he did on Fnatic.
Okay.
Straight out the gate.
Yeah, my thought on Liquid, I mean, just based upon what I've seen at DreamHack and what I've seen of them at other recent smaller tournaments, is that I think the individual play of the players is probably stronger overall. With that said, I think Vortex and Lucifron had horrible DreamHacks. I mean, they were just not that good there. But I think the bigger issue is that they have some obvious shot calling problems in their games. There's a lack of decisiveness that's really evident right now when you watch them. Like, I was watching the Enter the Storm tournament today where they were playing Fnatic, and they were just never really able to seize the initiative even when they'd knocked down a couple players on Fnatic's team, like on the Tomb of the Spider Queen game, for example. They had an aborted boss attempt when everyone was like at level 22 or something like that. I mean, really, really late game stuff, and even at DreamHack, I mean, you look at their series against Dignitas, for example. Yeah, Team Liquid won that series, but they arguably shouldn't have. I felt like Dignitas was really controlling most of the play during most of the games. I feel like, in particular, Team Liquid was very lucky to take even one game off of Fnatic. I mean, Fnatic just dominated those games through and through for the most part. I mean, they were the aggressors. They were dictating the tempo, dictating the course of the engagements, and Liquid just seemed kind of out of sorts a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Liquid too is that prior to the changes, they would never really say that they had one specific shot caller, but they would admit that Lucifron did most of the calling when it came to things like whether or not to chase down a team fight and to try to wipe the team instead of letting one or two get away. But I've heard that Gerdam has really taken up the helm of shot calling. So I'm not sure if there's any sort of miscommunications going on, because every now and again they do something and it's like, it feels like there were definitely two different things going on in their heads. And I mean, Lucifron and Vortex, they're brothers. They've been playing together for how long? They know how each other play. And with Gerdam, Chris, and Lowell, they're new to the team. So there's still a bit of synergy that needs to be built up there. I really would be interested to know who is making the calls, because like you said, there was a lot of questionable things. And
It's just very
in a lot of
play.
situations,
Yeah.
it was very tentative, and it felt very strange just because usually, like, if they make a mistake, it's because they overstepped their bounds. until they started
were
getting
really
shaky near
aggressive.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about kind of classic Team Liquid when they were at the height of their powers this spring, they were really aggressive. I mean, they were always taking it to the other team. They were routinely finishing their games really early just because they were out rotating everyone and really pushing the play and pushing their advantage, or at least any advantage they were able to get. I haven't seen anything like that. I mean, they're just not the same team right now in terms of the shot calling and the overall decision making throughout a game.
Right.
I think
Well,
the
you
other thing
can-
that's kind
wait.
of suspect with them right now is their drafting. But go ahead.
I was going to say, when you replace a team, when you replace 60% of the players on a team, are they really comparable to the older team? Because
Well,
it's
I
almost
think
like a whole new team, right? Like we can't
Right,
say
pretty
they're going
much.
to be
Well,
aggressive like the old
their captain and their shot color are still there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I think the core of the team sort of stayed the same. But I totally agree with you there. And, we could have a very long conversation about player retention, and I'm sure we will in the future. But for right now, I'll let that one go because that's one of my trigger topics, I guess you could say.
Personally, I think the overall mechanical level on the team rose up quite a bit. I think Gurdam Hurd is a better support than Grand Paquette. I'm just gonna say that straight up. I think he's a really good support. And Chris and Lowell both have a very aggressive assassin style, so it's really nice to see them in place of Falcon and Blackscorp. And I think I would rate them even higher in terms of skill. So I think overall, there's definitely a rise in skill on the team, but definitely they're still having some shot calling problems.
Well, again, I mean, the biggest problem with Team Liquid before they revamped the roster was Blackscorp because he was such a one-dimensional player, comparatively speaking. He could play a couple heroes really well, and then after that, it was a really, really iffy proposition.
Right.
So simply making that change was going to help out a lot, I think.
But I do also like that they have Lowell there, who kind of fills in that role that Blackscorp
Yeah,
did.
he does.
Where he does that Illidan. He does a lot of melee assassins, Illidan, Thrall, and his new recent damage monk, which is awesome to see. He did something else weird today. What did he do? I'll remember it later. He did something else that was really weird, and it was awesome. But just the fact that he can play those melee assassins to good effect is a really nice addition to the team. But he has a much wider hero pool.
I will say this: someone needs to tell Team Liquid to quit drafting Rexar because I feel like they're not picking him in the right places. They're not using him right.
Dragonshire, bust.
It's just been a disaster every time. I mean, like
Right.
like at the at DreamHack, they picked Rexar twice. It was a disaster both times, and they picked him into like range compositions. I mean, I think of Rexar as being an anti-melee hero. I mean, if there are a lot of melee heroes on the other side, Rexar's pretty good pick at that point. I mean, you could definitely use him because that bear just causes all sorts of trouble. But against a bunch of ranged heroes, why would you bother against that? But they did it,
Right.
and it just looked bad. It looked really bad.
It's just
The
I think
casters really play up how well Rexar plays on Dragonshire, but I think you're absolutely right that
Yeah, I
if
don't
Misha
see
gets
it.
blown up by a ranged comp, then I mean, once Misha is blown up, what's the point? Like,
yeah. What's the point of having Rexar? True. What do you guys think about the additions to Fnatic?
God, they're
Working out for them
amazing.
so far.
Yeah, I mean,
They're so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, Quacknix is incredible. I mean, he's a legitimate superstar. I mean, he really emerged at DreamHack.
Yeah.
Well,
He's a
you know what's
great
interesting? So I know this about Quagnex because I actually watched a lot of Pirates in Pajamas way back at the European Championship. So Quagnex was on Pirates in Pajamas originally, him and Smexy style, and that was the first time that we actually saw Falstad played in pro play for many, many months.
Yeah.
Is from Quagnex. So he's actually been playing Falstad for a long time, a lot longer than a lot of the other people. So I think when we switched over to the scaling changes and Falstad suddenly became this amazing hero that had lots of potential, I think that benefited him a lot and made him look a lot better than kind of gave him a boost, I guess I would say.
Well, here's the other thing about Quacknix, and I found this out when I interviewed Breeze recently, and that is Quacknix is the shot caller for Fnatic. He's the one making all those plays. And I don't know if anyone noticed what Fnatic was doing in their games and how their play style has evolved, but they are balls out aggressive now. They are in your face, making plays. They are setting up traps and ganks and rotating heavily. It is really, really fun and incredible to watch. And I asked Breeze whether that was something that the team had decided to do, whether they, adopted some new philosophy. He said, no, that's just Quacknix telling us what to do with the shot calling. and it's incredible to watch because they're so on point. I mean, they literally outmaneuver everyone.
Yeah. It's really nice
so
to see that Swedish
strong.
meta.
Yeah, they are technically strong too.
Yeah, and I mean, Breeze has always been a very aggressive player, which was kind of like, I feel like that was almost one of Fnatic's weak points previously, but not in a bad way. Like, he was aggressive in a good way, it just didn't match with what everybody else on the team wanted to do. And I think that's why this shuffle, while I do not like huge team player shuffles, worked out really, really well. And we've all seen videos, we all know how loud Breeze is. And like when he gets into team fights, he's out for the blood. Like he doesn't do the shot calling in general. It used to be main, and now it's Quack. But when it comes to actual team fights, he's the one that's screaming who to target down, and he will chase them to the ends of the earth unless he's yelled at not to. And this new roster works so well for that style. And I mean, I'm not sure who his mains are right now, but I mean, previously, Anubarak and Muradin were two of his tops, and there's a reason for that. It's because he could jump and chase and stun and keep everybody where he wanted them.
I've seen
and
him
now
play
he's
a
got
lot
a
of.
team that can follow that up.
I've seen a lot of Muradin etc from Breeze recently. Those have been his two.
And that doesn't surprise me one bit. Like, that is the players that they have now between Sexy and Quack and Shad to a certain extent works really well for the way he likes to play. And I mean, he's probably one of the strongest warrior players in the world, in my opinion. Right. Which is crazy to think that. And like he's in pretty good competition for best hair with Shrimpy too. So
that's true.
I'm just throwing that out there. So I think that the new team has really benefited him, and I'm hoping that it continues that way, and that when the roster is 100% finalized, that it does end up propelling them to the top, because they could easily be a top team, a top contender, and they're already showing that. I mean, Enter the Storm, they wrecked today. They beat out Team Liquid in the finals. So they've got the potential. They're already starting to realize it. If they can keep that momentum going, then by this time next year, we're going to have an incredible European team on top.
So speaking of Shrimpy having great hair and super handsome teams, what do you guys think about the new Dignitas? And actually, I'm going to step out for 1 second.
Fabulous.
I'll be right back, but you guys keep talking.
So I haven't really been following the new Dignitas too much, so I can't say too much.
They should be an upgraded roster based upon what they did.
It definitely looks like an upgraded roster. I will say that having Shrimpy and JPL on the same team, like the nice level on that team must be through the roof, because I find both of them to be absolutely wonderful individuals. So that's one thing that I can comment on the fly, because like I said, I really haven't been keeping track of their play. But I could see how that would be a good combination. I mean, do either of you know more about Dignitas? Because this is 100% not my topic.
The one thing that I'll say about Dignitas is they have very, very strong players overall. I think that they definitely upgraded by adding Shwimpy to the team in particular. Their strength. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say he's their best player, but the player on Dignitas always stands out to me as Bakery, just because he may be the best support player in the world right now, with what he does. I mean, he basically has single-handedly shown that Morales can work at a professional level. I mean, no other.
Well, it feels like every time a new support has come out, he's been one of the first people to go, see, it works. Don't doubt it.
Yeah.
He did that with
I think the difference with the medic, though, is that she's very draft dependent. Like, she is definitely, I think I mentioned before, she's the best when they can draft her after they're sure that the other team is not going to have heavy engage and aren't going to be able to get to that back line. And they also, in one of the games I saw, they utilized Zagara and Falstead really well to just make more buffers. Like Maws were used to actually prevent the enemy team from engaging the medic, and Mighty Gust was used to push the enemy team back. And as long as she has that frontline support, she's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect Dignitas to continue to compete at a very, very high level and be one of the top teams in Europe. I would expect them to continue to be top 3. I think Fnatic's going to be up there with them. And as for the third team, I don't know, maybe Na'Vi when they sort their things out, maybe Team Liquid. But I definitely expect Dignitas to continue to be a strong player.
I
I'm
can
excited.
definitely see Dignitas becoming stronger than Liquid. I think
they are stronger
definitely see
than Liquid right now. I think that their shot calling's better.
Yeah, but where are their results, bro? No, just kidding. No, I'm like the biggest Dignitas
So
fan.
harsh.
You don't even
drop
know.
the mic.
No, I'm like the biggest Dignitas fan. I love Dignitas. And Bakery is like one of the nicest people on earth. And
See, nice levels.
exactly. And I'm really excited to see Shrimpy and JPL on the team because I love both of their playstyles and I think they add a lot to the team. I think Shrimpy in particular has a lot of really interesting picks. Like we saw him back in the day, when he was on Navi, he was really well known for his Tirana play, as well as some other minor off-tank picks and things like that. It's really nice to see him on Dignitas. We saw him use the Vikings at Dreamhack. We saw him use a couple of other interesting picks. And so it's nice to have that kind of flexibility on their team to be able to play with that and still have the super aggressive assassin playstyles of JPL and Snitch on the team.
Yeah.
So I like it. I like it quite a bit. Rocket. You guys know much about Rocket? I haven't honestly been following much of Rocket, but they've always seemed to do consistently pretty well.
Yeah, they're like the team that always makes it narrowly missing it, like in the very end, which is kind of unfortunate, but
They had a decent showing at DreamHack. I was watching some of their games, and it looked like they'd improved. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not ready to put them in the conversation with the other teams that we've been talking about yet. I mean, they have to go win something. I mean, and you know, here's the thing: is that Christine mentioned that she's not a big fan of wholesale roster changes. Well, all right, yeah, I can understand that, but I mean, if you're not getting the results at some point, I mean, what do you got to lose? And so that's why I don't mind Fnatic going out there and really shuffling the deck on the roster like they did, because they weren't going anywhere. They hadn't gone anywhere yet. I mean, they're Breeze is Breeze and Main are the oldest players on the roster, and they've only been there since July. End of July, really. And they clearly, management there clearly was not happy with what they were seeing since Alpha, and just kept shuffling the deck, and finally they seem to have come up with something good. So, for these other teams like a Rokat, for example, yeah, I mean, they should probably keep on shuffling a little bit, bring in new blood, because you never know where like the next Quacknix, for example, is gonna come from. One of the problems that I have with the North American scene right now is that it seems like things have kind of stagnated a little bit. Where's the new blood? Where are the new players emerging? Whereas in Europe, it looks like, we are seeing some new people show up that, were not prominent names before, and we're seeing improved talent come into play. And so there just has to be a continual process of new players getting into the game, getting discovered, and making that leap to the professional level.
Yeah, I think I heard Zoya say on a different podcast that right now, basically the way people get recruited to teams is by knowing someone on the team, and that it's very much a closed circle. And if you're a really good player but you don't know anyone, well, then you should probably try to actually meet someone, because
that's not just North America, though. That's Europe. I can't really speak to the Asian scene.
That's life.
That is life a little bit, but especially when it comes to esports, it's who you know, unless you've somehow blown something out of the water and made people recognize. Most of these people have, like, whenever there is a switch on a team, they've played with that person for months. And like even if it's just like duo queuing with them, they've played with them, so they have a pretty good idea of what to expect when they join the team. And like some of the trials don't last very long, and there's a reason for that. It's because they've already been playing with them. Like they
Right.
see they see the writing on the walls, and they start looking. And if they've got a friend that they're getting along with really well, and they know that they'll synergize with at least one person, they'll try it out. And it worked out for Fnatic, getting Cocknix and Smexy. But it is really hard already for new blood to come into the scene, especially in North America. Teams are a lot more hesitant to try out new people because they don't want to have to deal with switching it out again if it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's just a
And
rotation
that's an
of
unfortunate
retreads
reality.
in North America right now.
It is.
It's really
And
sad.
I wish that wasn't the case. And I wish that it would open up a little bit. But at the same time, I mean, people need to step up and get to the level of play where they're able to compete with some of these heavy hitters in Europe and Korea, because we don't have that right now. And I wish we did. I wish we had the same level. And there are some players who far and away like are on the same level or above, but not full teams worth yet. And I think that's where North America falls flat.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's because the players aren't there. I don't know if it's because the teams
this-
just aren't open to finding them. But
This brings up an interesting proposition. So we're talking about a lot of roster changes and player shuffling and stuff like that. Would you say that having more teams splinter off into smaller teams, stuff like the Bob Ross fan club from former Tempo Storm, do you think that's good for the scene in the sense that it brings a lot of maybe lesser known players to light?
Well, yeah,
think
but
that-
but the Bob Ross fan club is basically a bunch of people we know already.
Is it?
I mean,
do you
yeah.
know anybody besides Yuna and McIntyre, and who's the third person?
Kenma.
Kenma. No, Kenma
Wait,
and More?
Who's the fifth
Arthur?
one on there?
who's the fifth?
Arthelon? Or did you say that already?
Oh, I did not say Arthlon. And then I don't know who the fifth person is.
Zuna, Arrow? I don't know who you said at first, but I'm pretty sure it's Kenma, Zuna, Arrow, Arthelon.
who is Arrow?
and then McIntyre?
Who's Arrow?
Arrow? He is a friend.
Oh yeah,
of
yeah,
one of
yeah,
theirs, I think.
yeah. Airho. No, I mean all those
Oh,
guys we
Airho.
know.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah,
All of them.
mispronunciation.
From?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean all those guys have
Kenma's
been
Zuna's
around
brother,
since,
isn't he?
since Alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
is.
So, there you go.
I mean they're all kind of known quantities. I mean you know what you're getting with all of them at this
Right,
point.
okay. Fair enough.
And so I would consider them to be new blood. And frankly, it's kind of hard to tell how good they are right now because they haven't really played anybody yet. At least as far as I can tell in an actual tournament. Who they're scrimming otherwise, I don't know. But
Yeah.
They look
the reality
relatively
is-
strong. Watching their Enter the Storm, I mean, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, they won.
it-
They won 3 straight qualifiers.
Yep.
Well, we got to see them play Cloud9.
Yeah.
That's- and actually,
is that
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
that's
you
the
know,
meter stick?
yeah, there's Cloud9, and then there's everybody else at this point. I mean, with Tempo Storm blowing up, I mean, the North American scene is kind of lopsided right now. You know, one of these
100%.
other teams has to step up, and I don't know who it's going to be at this point.
There's a lot of potential, and like the problem is, like 3 teams that tend to stick together are Kappa Wolves, Cognitive, and Murloc Geniuses. They usually scrim together, and it's one of those things where it's like when you think about them individually, and you're like, is this team a top team? You're like, no. Is this team a top team? Maybe, like they could, but not right now. And there's no real team that you can think of that you're like, you know what? Yeah, they could be a top team. Like, when you think of it in perspective of just this region, you could go, well, in our region, they're kind of a top team, but they're not that strong. So I
They're
think
just
in
not.
our region specifically, splintering off isn't a bad thing right now because we need to get some blood flowing. But even when there was a possibility for that blood to start flowing, it didn't. It was a brother and a friend that joined Bob Ross fan club.
Right.
And
Okay.
there's really not many other teams bringing in new folks, so we don't get to see any of that. And I've already made my
Well,
speech
to-
on whether or not it's new players or players that
To be fair, I try to always keep this in mind whenever we talk about the pro scene in Heroes of the Storm. The fact that Heroes of the Storm is technically only 6 months old, like we haven't even begun to really hit much of a growth spurt.
Right.
We don't really know what the future of esports really holds. So, although it is a little disheartening to see North America, behind in a lot of respects, other than obviously the former Tempo Storm and Cloud9, we are definitely it's still in its infant stages, so we still have a lot of time to grow and lots of time for new superstars like our North American Quacknicks to come out of nowhere and emerge. So
Don, now is your time.
I think that's
Thrall's on top. Now's your time.
No, I mean I know a ton of players out there who are incredibly mechanically gifted who just aren't on teams. Now I'm not involved in the team league circuit right now. I mean I know that there are all sorts of scrim leagues and whatnot that the people are in and players are in, and I would think that through that we'd see more new blood showing up in the North American scene, but so far no dice.
No dice.
We'll get there. I believe in us. So going back to the player shuffling, talking about teams breaking up and reforming and stuff like that, what are some of the positive and negative aspects you guys see from that sort of thing? Do you guys have anything specific you can point to as being a positive or a negative?
Fox, you haven't said anything in a bit. What do you think?
I mean, obviously the players must like it because they get to actually be on the teams they want to be on. Yeah.
Well, for example, so give us an example of that.
An example of that?
Yeah. Do you have an example off the top of your head?
I mean, the biggest example would obviously be Tempo Storm, since clearly the players didn't want to be on a team together, and then now they're on new teams and supposedly happy in their new arrangements.
Right. And I think didn't we see something similar with Fnatic as well?
Yeah.
Yep,
they were having some tensions and they broke up, which has obviously worked out nicely for them.
Mm-hmm. So far, so
I mean,
good.
you have to be able to shuffle the deck. I mean, I know fans would like to see some degree of continuity, but the reality is that if it's not working, change it up. You got to be able to change it up. And it's not like we're in a world yet where we have players that are locked into contracts and there's collective bargaining like we would see in a professional sports league. So
even basic
with that in
contracting
mind,
like Riot's.
There's what?
Even basic contracting like Riot has, I think could still be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, someone would have to throw a lot of money at the scene in order to get that kind of stability, and it's just not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand what you mean. It's still unfortunate to me that I can understand needing to switch out a couple players, but I like the idea of having at least a 60% retention. Just because then players are guaranteed to have a bit of a safety net, but they also the teams stay relatively similar, so fans will stick with teams, and that's part of building the scene too. But again, this is
it kind of goes back to what Mother Fox said way earlier, where he was saying, if 3 of the members were changed out, are we still cheering for the same Team Liquid? Is it possible to compare the new Team Liquid to old Team Liquid? Are they still the same team? Right? Yeah. And that's one of those
if
things
Lucifer and Vortex left, I think they are Team Liquid in a lot of ways, just because everybody really knows. Even if you've heard it but you don't know what it means, you've heard of the Duran brothers. So you're Team Liquid, Lucifer and Vortex, at least in my mind. I could be totally off. You can tell me if I'm off, but that's how I perceive it. So I think
they've always been the heart of it, for sure.
Yeah, even though 60% of the team left, they still sort of feel like Team Liquid, whereas Fnatic is just Fnatic right now. Breeze is still there, and people like Breeze, so Breeze is sort of the face of it now. But like we said earlier, he's the only player left, and he was only brought onto the team. Wow, that grammar was terrible. Sorry. He was only brought onto the team in July. So Fnatic isn't really a team with sort of an identity And I'm hoping that they build it up and that by this time next year, we won't have to be having a debate on, well, is it really the same team for most of these teams? We'll just know, well, you know what? They replaced one or two people, but this team is the team that we remember. This is the team that we've been cheering for. These are the players that we love.
Yeah.
And that'll be the end of it, because that means that not only are we succeeding in player retention, we're succeeding in skill level, and we're succeeding in popularity. Like, the teams are getting the support they need to continue on and to continue getting better and to not have any worries. Hakuna Matata.
Well, here's the other thing too, is that you have to think about who these players are personally. As we're dealing with a bunch of under 25-year-old boys,
True.
Under 20 in some cases. These are individuals who are in very volatile periods of their lives, and so to expect some degree of continuity from them, that could be a tough ask a lot of times. And so that's going to play into the difficulties that we see with regards to these teams staying together, particularly if they're sharing a team house together, and they're all kind of growing up together, and things aren't necessarily mixing and matching particularly well. Because the reality is that everyone's changing still at that age, so I would not expect things to remain stable.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. And at the same time, I understand that from a human perspective that's the case, but when you consider that this is a profession, there's got to be a certain level of... They got to earn
Show them
it.
the money first. I'm not calling it a profession yet.
I mean,
yes.
If you quit everything to go into esports, whether you're a player, whether you're a caster, you're taking that on as your profession. Like, if I quit everything else I was doing to go hardcore into journalism for esports, I'd consider that a profession. I might not do very well. I might be a terrible journalist, and I might totally poop the bed when it comes to actually producing money, but it's still a profession, and I'd still take it seriously. And regardless, like, I understand that they need to get along, and that's why some player houses clearly have not worked very well. But there has to be a level of professionalism even when you're bonding with your teammates, and I feel like that isn't expected, so we're not getting it. But in other countries where it is expected, we're not seeing these same issues. And I don't know if it's just because it's not publicized or because there aren't any issues, but they're not there.
We're seeing some, like, for instance, if you think about the breakdown of Snake Esports in Korea, they had a real issue with, oh my gosh, his name is completely gone from my head. Oreo Man.
I know who you're talking
Oreo
about.
Man.
Yeah.
So they had a complete breakdown with Oreo Man, who was, I essentially he was the Zuna of Korea. His playstyle was very similar, and he had kind of a shady background where people weren't sure about his attitude and stuff like that. So there was a breakdown between the group, and you can see in their games that there was kind of this communication breakdown, and in fact there was even some question of whether or not their support player led the other team into a bush that Oreo Man was recalling in just to kill him in a professional game. Stuff like that. There's all kinds of shady, shifty stuff going on. I think it's less apparent to us because it's a little bit further away from us, but
it could be.
I think there's cultural differences though too between say Europe and North America, and then Korea, where Asian culture is just different in terms of the level of discipline that's instilled in the people over there. I mean, not just professional players, but just the people culturally. It's really a whole different universe than what we have out here. And they're going to have a very different attitude towards the work ethic and the interpersonal relations, and then just putting all the crap to the side and keeping their nose down to the grindstone than the way you'd expect to see over here.
Yeah, I mean, we're generation, and by we I mean like the millennials. We're Generation Special Star. We are the generation that wants to feel unique and feel like we deserve respect, and that's why a lot of that discipline and that work hard in order to actually get anything goes away, is because we think that we deserve it now and that we'll earn it, and we will earn it. But for right now, you just got to trust me. And if it doesn't go down, we get upset about it.
Yeah.
These are all just kind of gross generalizations, though, right? Like,
I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying being one, I can
mean,
confirm
saying-
we are like a generation of
But
special
basically,
snowflakes.
everyone that's
consider-
like 20 to 25 thinks that way exactly. That's all she's saying.
Yeah, every single one of us.
I think you're all a bunch of asshats.
I mean, I've been sitting here thinking about the comment about what these guys are between 20 and 25 and therefore are changing a lot. Like, that may be true for some people, but there's a lot of people who just change their entire life.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
you know,
If
as
you're
the
not,
scene,
there's something wrong.
yeah, basically, like a year from now, the people that are still playing Heroes of the Storm that we're talking about now, they're the ones that are just more consistent personality types. And it doesn't have much to do with age. It's just, you know, they're the people who like to stick around and do the same thing all the time. And just like, I mean, there's also a lot of people who like to just work really hard at improving themselves. And that should be most of the pro players, I'd imagine.
I
Because
would
that's
hope
how they
so.
got good in the first place, right?
One would hope.
One would hope.
I hope that is the direction we go in.
I'm just naturally
now, there's
gifted at leading people in
definitely-
the bushes.
What do you guys think about some of the negatives in terms of losing drafters, shot caller captains, things like that? For instance, I think one of the teams that suffered the most from Dreamhack was Dignitas, who ADRD was their primary drafter, and apparently he did some of the shot calling in the game. So when he left, we saw them kind of floundering around in the shot calling a bit. Do you think that's a negative that we can definitely see from teams?
I think they looked okay with the shot
Think so?
calling. Yeah, I do. I mean, they were certainly running circles around Liquid a lot of the time. I didn't see anything that really stood out as being particularly bad from Dignitas in the same way that I saw bad play out of Liquid when it came to shot calling.
Well, I feel like the Dignitas that we see now is obviously not as coordinated as they were before. Some of the fights we saw before from Dignitas were just they were absolutely perfect. Like everybody was doing the exact right thing at the right time, always.
Yeah.
And now there's some disjunction between that. But the biggest thing that I noticed is just their drafting doesn't seem to be as flawless as it was before, and I'm not sure if that's just because of a change in hero pools from JPL and Shrumpy, or if it's just that they are not drafting as optimally as they used to be.
I think that in general, losing a power player, whether it's somebody who's just really strong technically, or if they're your drafter, your shot caller, your captain, it's always going to be a major blow to the team. I remember when Gamescom was going on, MSI MGA. Was it MSI MGA? No, sorry, it was WCA. After the first day, I think, of playing, Team Liquid got wrecked. And they spent hours afterwards just doing drafts. And that's not an exaggeration. That's literally how long they spent sitting at computers practicing drafting. And they needed it. So I think that that's one of the biggest issues. And unless you're able to bring someone in who is either superior, or at least near the same level for something like drafting or calling shots, when you lose that person, it's going to be a big blow. So I definitely think that was a negative. It's kind of up in the air whether or not it really affected Dignitas at this point. I mean, we haven't seen any huge positive or negative outcomes from it yet, I think.
Right?
I mean, obviously,
they had a good showing
they
at
haven't done
DreamHack.
as well.
Yeah, They had a good showing, but it definitely wasn't
It
as
wasn't
good.
stellar,
I think. Yeah.
but it was a good showing. So, I mean, until you get more results in just one tournament, it's really hard to say specifically that losing this role was the reason that something didn't go well or the reason that it did go well. So it'll be another tournament or two before I'm really willing to say this person being gone is totally the reason why this team has fallen apart.
Right.
But I can't
There's
imagine
also-
it's easy for any team to lose that.
There's also any number of reasons why drafting mistakes could start slipping into a team's play, right? Like the meta could shift away from what the drafter was comfortable with. The same thing for shot calling. There's the teams shuffling. So really, it's just a question of like, how long does a team have to fail at drafting or shot calling before we just say, okay, well, they're not going to get better.
That sounds so
But-
sad.
I live in the cold.
You're on the
frozen
clock,
north.
Dignitas.
Right. Well, I mean, kind of the other side of that coin is every time someone loses somebody who is like integral to their team, sometimes other teams gain things. So, what's probably the most obvious change? I mean, we keep going back to Quacknix, right? Quacknix is obviously yeah. What do you guys do? You have another example of somebody who is significantly added to the roster? All right.
Well,
okay.
I mean, look. I mean, if you want to look at something analogous that happened in the North American scene, the replacement of Glaurung with Zuna paid huge short-term dividends for Tempo Storm back then.
that's
I mean,
true.
he gave them a level of aggression that they didn't have before, and he was just a much better version of Glaurung. Zuna could play all the same heroes that Glaurung could, plus a whole bunch of others, and he played them better, frankly. And it really showed up, and Tempo Storm was just a beast of a team as soon as Zuna
Right.
showed up, and then I guess whatever happened, and then it fell apart.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's a really good example, definitely, because yeah, Zuna definitely added a lot, and I think his hero pool in particular was a little bit wider than Glaurung's, and so that also
Much.
that helped significantly. I think that's something we're also seeing with someone like Lowell, like we talked about earlier. Lowell is like Black Scorp in a lot of ways, but he has a much wider hero pool
Yeah.
and choose from. Let's see, I do have one more point that I think is interesting. So there's one of the negatives that I have down in our notes is disillusionment after losing, and what I mean by that is you have a new team, you shuffle a lot of players, and it's like we were talking about with the shot calling. Like, if you shuffle a bunch of players and nothing seems to really change, and actually you get worse, you start losing at tournaments, is that something that can really negatively impact the team in terms of mindset?
Yeah.
People are different, right? You got to take a step back and ask yourself, like, why are we getting worse? Is the opposition getting better, or is this just a fluke?
Right.
You got to roll the dice.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not winning, you're not winning, and then it's just a matter of degrees of losing at that point, and losing blows. So, if that means you got to shuffle things up and have a few misses before you hit something good, fine. But I can definitely see why that would hurt, having to take a couple of steps back, like I
Right.
think we're going to see some of these teams do in Europe, for example, or maybe Tempo Storm in North America. They may take a few steps back
Right.
with the changes they've undergone.
Yeah, well, it's hard to stay at the top there when you lose like two of the big players on the team.
Yeah.
All right, so just big overarching questions. So, do you guys think that the roster changes have affected the teams in a good or bad way? Do we know yet? Do we still have to keep watching? What do you guys think?
I think in Europe it's so far so good. I think in North America we still need some time to figure that one out.
Well, I guess it depends on who you're talking about in Europe. I think Fnatic clearly struck gold with what they've been doing. They got to lock down their last roster spot, figure out what they're going to do with Shot, or whether they bring in someone else. I don't know, but they seem to be on the right track, especially when you compare where they are now to where they were before, relative to the rest of the scene. I think Liquid eventually is going to be in a better place. They just have to work out some issues. I tend to think that Dignitas should be improved as well. I think that Schwimpy's a better version of ADRD. I could be wrong in that assessment, but that's my take on it. They should be improved.
Okay. Other Fox? You gotta have some input. You're not allowed to walk away without saying anything.
Not allowed to say. All right, so
Fired. Just kidding.
I think the real question is, like, how long do we wait before we decide whether this was the team is just getting used to each other, or like this is it and another change is required, that kind of thing.
2 months.
2 months.
2 months.
Throughout 2 months.
Well, maybe it's not even.
That's
like 20%
universal.
of the
Everyone
season so far.
knows.
Maybe it's
For
not
the game
even
pass.
time. Maybe it's like the number of major tournaments, because every tournament, of course, you gain experience with what you can
Right.
expect out of teammates and that kind of thing.
That's true. All right. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything we needed to talk about. Do you guys have anything extraneous you want to bring up?
I was right about Thrall.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But he drops
I
out of
don't-
the meta, well, you're wrong.
It's like Phantom
I'll take
said.
the shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's like Phantom said. Like it only took a one minor change of changing everything in the game in order to make it viable. All right. So we do have an announcement, make, and I'm gonna give the floor to Christine to make that announcement.
All right, so I am very pleased to announce that with the launch of our new landing page, teamliquid.net/heroes, and with the beginning of these podcasts, we are going to be doing a rather large-scale skin giveaway. The caveat on this one is that we want you to give us a skin first. So we want you to submit your best skin idea, whether it's something like Mailman Tassadar or Illidan the Employer. We would like you to submit your skin idea with a design. So if you are a great Photoshop artist, go for it hardcore, make them look like they are in game. If you have the art skills of my dog, feel free to do a crayon drawing. Interpretive dance, not accepted, but anything that's visual that we can see, submit that, submit the name of your skin. If you want to send a description, that works too. We're going to be giving away Kaijo Diablo, Succubus Kerrigan, Stormantle Malfurion, Magni Muradin, and Commander Raynor. We don't have a limit on how many we're going to give away. Not everybody who submits will get one. But if it's creative, if it's original, if there's a good story behind it or a good reason for it to make sense, or if it just makes us laugh, you'll probably get a skin. So you can submit it to one of two ways. We just posted a thread on our Team Liquid Heroes forum, which I think we'll link on our Twitter account. And if anybody is in Twitch right now, if you could link it, that would be awesome. We just linked or posted the thread. You can create an account, log in, and submit your design there. Or you can follow our Twitter account at Liquid Heroes, and you can use the hashtag NNSkins, so Nexus Night Skins, and submit it that way as well. And remember, we need the name of the skin and the picture of the skin itself. And hopefully by next podcast, we will have our winners, and you will get to choose which skin you'd like. So that way, if you already have Malfurion, you don't really want it, you could pick a Succubus Kerrigan, be good to go. And we will feature some of the winners, the top winners, the creme de la creme of skin design on the podcast next time around.
Excellent. And that's a $5 to $10 value for each skin, right?
Mhm.
So that's
Add money.
major. That's
No
major.
resale value.
Yeah, please, no resale.
So by the way, that skin sale ends on Monday. Don't buy those. Don't buy those. You want to get them for free.
Yeah,
For free.
that's true, actually. If you want any of those, just submit a design. Make it good. Make it count. One entry per person.
Right.
And you need to pay.
You might get a succubus Malfurion.
I think that one, I don't think that's right, but I could be wrong. All right, I think that wraps up anything we have to say. Once again, we are the Team Liquid writing team, and you can follow us at Liquid Heroes on Twitter, and just keep up with what we're doing. We are dedicated to bringing you the top quality news coverage and strategy articles. So keep up with us. Whoop. All right, you guys ready? See you later.
Bye.
Later.
Later.